It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, PG Bitch Boy Millzy? I'm Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millzy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to out-brew your favorite Magic channel. As normal, the deck list will be down in the description. If that's what you care about, you can take it, do what you want with it, and make it your own. Today we're going to talk about the Virtue and Valor precon and my upgrade for it. And I have to say, I really like this deck. One, because I really like Ellivere. I think it's a really interesting commander, and it sparked me doing some brewing of my own, which always makes me happy. But the second is, I think the precon is really good at what it delivers. Ellivere is an auras commander at the end of the day. The deck is about auras, enchanting creatures with auras. And sure, there are some high dollar auras, but I think the cool part about auras is there's so many cheap and dirty auras that do so much good stuff. And I think the precon does a really good job at delivering that to you. I took and I put my upgrades to the precon. We're still sitting at about $200 for the deck. And I still think this deck packs a punch. It has so many good cards that are going to help us along the way. The deck gave us killer reprints as well, which makes me really happy. And this spawned me doing a couple brews of my own, not only for this deck, but some other decks. And maybe we'll talk about that another time. But let's look at Ellivere of the Wild Court, the commander of the Virtue and Valor precon. 2 green and a white for a 4/4 human knight. It says, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a virtuous roll token attached to a creature you control. If you control another roll on it, put that one into your graveyard. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. This is whenever an enchanted creature you control does combat damage to a player, draw a card. Okay. I want to break this down really quickly. So whenever she, to my knowledge, but I could be wrong, ETBs or attacks, free all that glitters onto a creature you control. This is basically what this virtuous roll token is. It's an all that glitters. Well, all that glitters minus artifacts, right? It's basically what it is on any creature you want. Obviously, you want to pick another attacking creature so it punches even harder, but that's pretty great. Cannot do it on Ellivere, which is completely fine. I think that's fair. So Ellivere, we could stack up and make all of our creatures bigger with that. And then whenever we deal combat damage to a player, we draw cards. We get our own little reconnaissance mission type effect as long as our creature is enchanted, which isn't going to be that big of a deal because Ellivere is going to give us ones, other creatures in the deck are going to give us rolls, and we're just going to play a ton of auras anyway. So I think Ellivere is great. It has a ton of really good abilities. It's worth it for 4 mana because you get it as soon as it comes down. And then that virtuous roll token is actually going to grow as you put more and more enchantments down. So I really like it. So let's talk about the mana base. I left it pretty the things I added in: Bountiful Promenade, Overgrown Farmland, Sunpetal Grove. I think Temple came in the deck. Wooded Bastion, Fortified Village, I'm pretty sure came in the deck. And then the Command Tower and the Canopy Vista and just basics. We don't need a ton of snazzy lands. I like the Hall of Heliod's Generosity. It actually didn't get a reprint in this precon. I actually believe... Oh, it did. That's even better. I got a reprint in the deck. I like Hall of Heliod's Generosity a lot. Unless you get back things every turn and draw them the next turn. I really like Hall of Heliod's Generosity a lot, and I'm glad I got reprinted because it's one of our better utility lands we have access to in enchantments. All right, well, let's get into the crux of our deck being our enchantment suite. We have a couple different things here. We have a lot of auras because that's our goal. We want to put auras on our creatures and get them enchanted so we can use this virtual rolls tokens to better be. We're going to try to get a bunch of things that give us trample because we want our creatures that have those virtuous roll tokens to have trample so that they become even worse for opponents to block. 2 of my favorite enchantments that we get access to in these colors are Armadillo Cloak and Unflinching Courage because they give that creature +2/+2 trample and lifelink. So if we have a virtuous roll token on that creature, it is not only going to hit harder trample, but it's also going to have lifelink, which can keep us alive. But let's go through all of our enchantments, and we'll explain what their role is, pun intended, in the deck. A Tale for Ages, this is for the Ages new card. Each creature that's enchanted gets +2/+2 again. This is great. This is going to help all of our creatures get a teeny bit better. All that glitters is what we talked about. Our virtuous roll token being creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact or enchantment you control. Very, 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 very... no artifacts to my understanding in the deck. We're not playing... something like Stony Silence to shut down artifacts, but we're only playing with enchantments. Ancestral Mask is a card that is one of our potential game enders if we can get trample on something. It says enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. Everyone's enchantments count, not just ours. Ancestral Mask is great if we can put on a creature with flying. It can definitely help end games. Or if we can give it Ellivere some trample, could potentially knock some out with commander damage. I love Ancestral Mask. We talked about Armadillo Cloak, giving trample and lifelink. Bear Umbra, another great card, giving a creature +2/+2 whenever it attacks. Untap all lands we control that lets us play more auras, and then it has totem armor. So if the enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead of remove all damage and destroy this aura. And we'll talk about a creature that actually gives all of our auras totem armor, which is fantastic. Boon of the Spirit Realm from the Commander Master's Enchantress deck. Whenever we enter another enchantment, there's battlefield, we put a counter on it, and creatures we control get +1/+1 for each boon counter on it, or blessing counter on it. This is just going to help us in the long run. Again, creatures at that point don't even need to be enchanted to get this buff, and it could make all of our little tokens that we make. If there's some stuff in our deck that makes little tokens, there's some things that can do a lot of things, and so Boon of the Spirit Realm is just going to make our whole board grow bigger. Darksteel Mutation for a little bit of removal, making something into an 0/1 insect artifact with indestructible, no abilities, and loses all card types and creature types, other than, of course, being a creature. I love this card. Great piece of removal, and it can help lock down some important things our opponents have. Daybreak Coronet gets a reprint in the deck, and this is a fun one. +3/+3, First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. The only caveat to Daybreak Coronet is we actually have to have that creature already be enchanted. So that's perfectly fine. We can keep this on a creature and give them that cool buff. Enchantress Presence to help us draw a card when we cast enchantments. Unfortunately, this won't see our roll auras coming in, but we do have some other card draw that we'll see those. Ethereal Armor, +1/+1 for each enchantment you control, and First Strike. This is even better with trample because then we get to just hit through and get a bunch of damage in. Valor Retreat, I thought we'd try out getting a token every time a land comes in, or a +1/+1 counter each creature. I feel like the tokens could help, because they could sit back and block, or we could, use effects like Boon of the Spirit Realm, or, to help kind of buff them up, or just give more targets to attack with. I'm not 100% sure on Valor Retreat, but again, I think it fits what we're trying to do. Giant Inheritance, one of the new cards, really good. +5/+5, whenever this creature attacks, create a monster roll token attached up to one target attacking creature. So that creature gets +1/+1 and trample. So here's another way to throw some rolls around. This is when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand, so it's easy to get back. I like it. It's +5/+5, so I think it's worth the 5 mana when you start attaching monster roll tokens to things. I just like the virtuous roll more than I like the monster roll. But again, the monster roll is still really great. Griff of Immortality. Whenever that creature dies, we return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and then we return it to the battlefield attached to that creature, beginning with the next end step. Gift of Immortality feels great for our commander. It feels great for the other creatures we have, and hopefully we can keep something like Ellivere alive and going and keep getting value from it. Grasp of Fate just got that reprint in the Enchanting Tales, one of my favorite pieces of enchantment removal on an enchantment. When ETBs for each opponent, exile the one target on land permanent that player controls until it leaves the battlefield. One of your opponents has to get rid of Grasp of Fate to get their thing back, and Grasp of Fate is pretty darn cool at that. Griffin's Boon seems kind of interesting. 1 mana for +1/+1 flying, and 4 mana to bring it back. Attached to a creature at sorcery speed. Again, good, and this could, with combination of other cards, with combination with a virtuous roll, this could help us potentially knock somebody out or end a game by just giving something flying. One of my favorite single card adds to the deck is Hallowed Haunting, just because it's going to help us out for 2 things. One, when we control 7 or more enchantments, all of our creatures have flying vigilance. Again, this is going to help us potentially win by combat, which I think is the goal we want to do eventually with an aura deck. And then whenever we cast an enchantment, we get a cleric, spirit cleric. That's a star. We're stars, the number of spirits we control. So the more enchantments we cast, the more spirits we get, the bigger they get, and then eventually they're going to have flying. Hyena Umbra, +1/+1 and First Strike, and that totem armor. Ken's Transformation, another great piece of removal, making that creature to a 3/3 elk with no other abilities. I like Ken's Transformation a lot, and again, if you pick the right creature, it can certainly do a really good job. Mantle of the Ancients did get a reprint, I believe, in the deck as well. Enchanted creature we control, it enters the battlefield, returning a number of target auras or equipments from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to the creature. It's going to be auras in this case. and it gets +1/+1 for each aura or equipment attached to it. A great card. Again, we could stack up on a creature with him, but I like it. We can bring all of them from our graveyard back onto that creature. Michiko's Reign of Truth is one of my single favorite Enchantress cards. Been printed in a long time. 1 and 2 on it, give you a creature +1/+1 until end of turn for each enchantment you control. So this is a single turn, all that glitters, or we could double up, and then it flips into a zero, a star where stars the number of enchantments we control. I love this card. It's great on the front side. It's great on the back side. Mirari's Wake for a little bit of mana extra, and a +1/+1 to everybody. Rancor, the classic aura, +2/+0 and trample, and then whenever it's put into the battlefield, we return it to our hand. It's great here. It counts as an enchantment cast. It's easy to get back, and it just gives one of our creatures trample. Hopefully, in combination with that virtuous roll, we can do a lot of damage. We're trying out both the runes from Call Time. I think they're both cool because they draw your card when they come in. Rune of Might is +1/+1 and trample, and Rune of Sustenance is +1/+1 and lifelink. So both Rune of Sustenance is just lifelink. Great abilities, but they both draw you a card when they come in, and that's what we want to do in an Enchantress deck: churn through cards, find new cards. Sage's Reverie. When enters the battlefield, draw a card for each aura you control that's attached to a creature, which could potentially be a lot, depending on when we play this card. And then enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. Again, I effectively look at this as the same thing as all that glitters in this deck, because Ellivere is going to help us put rolls on creatures. Other of our abilities are putting rolls on creatures. We're going to always have auras kind of flying around on our creatures and helping us out. Season of Growth. Whenever a creature comes in under control, we scry one, and then whenever we cast a spell that targets a creature we control, draw a card. So anytime we cast a aura on our own creatures, we're going to draw a card, which is just as good as a Enchantress's presence in this deck because of how many auras we're playing. Shield of the Oversoul feels really good. If it's green, the creature gets +1/+1 and indestructible. If it's white, it gets +1/+1 and flying. So on our commander, this is +2/+2 indestructible and flying. We have a couple other multicolored creatures. Again, I like this. It's going to help give us some advantage by getting in the air. Solitary Confinement is one of my favorite enchantments to protect yourself with. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you sack it unless you discard a card. We do skip our draw step, but we have Shroud, and we prevent all damage that would be dealt to us. This is going to help us in a lot of ways, because if we can keep this out by drawing enough cards and pitching lands, whatever it may be, we're never worried about getting cracked back onto, and we can basically just attack for free. Now, most of our creatures are hopefully going to have Vigilance from different abilities, but Solitary Confinement just says, cool, well, I'm going to go all out, and you have no way to damage me unless you can get rid of Solitary Confinement. Again, if they could still attack you, no damage is dealt to you. You cannot get poison counters because damage isn't dealt to you. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get around a lot of things. So I like Solitary Confinement a lot, and it puts in work if you have enough cards to discard to it. Also gives you Shroud, so that's going to stop you from being targeted with some effects. Not every effect, but most effects, and I like that. Again, it gives you a good amount of protection, and as long as you can pitch cards to it, basic lands, cards you don't need, Solitary Confinement will help either keep you alive if you're at risk of dying, or just push you forward to potentially ending a game because you can't get damaged. Like, we can hopefully dish damage out. Songbird's Blessing, one of the new cards I really, really like. Whenever a equipped creature or enchanted creature attacks, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an aura card. You may put that card on the battlefield. If you don't, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom. Okay, so the aura comes in, and we get to choose who it attaches to. It's not like it has to come in to the creature that we're attacking with. The really odd rules thing that we need to talk about that's going to be really weird for some people is when an aura is placed on the battlefield and it's not cast, you can choose to target anything. Like, you can enchant anything, whether it has hexproof or shroud or whatever. It's just the way the rules work. So Songbird's Blessing could cheat us in a Kenrith's or a Darksteel mutation and attach it to something that has shroud or has ward or has hexproof, because it does not target. It just attaches. It's a weird rule. I still don't firmly understand it, but it's a rule we need to know and take advantage of if we're playing with auras. Spirit Mantle, +1/+1 and protection from creatures is going to effectively make it unblockable, which is pretty great, depending on what we're attaching it to. Sterling Grove, giving all of our enchantments Shroud and make them untargetable, and then 1 to sack it and get anything enchantment we want from our deck and put it on top. This will stop us from casting auras from our hand, and it will stop us from using Ellivere's ability. But I think the difference with Sterling Grove is we just keep the 1 mana up, sack it when we want to do something, and go get something and put it on top. I like Sterling Grove for my opponent's turn, protect my things, and if I need to take it and get something, boom, put it on top, and I'm going to draw it the next turn. Timely Ward. You can cast it at those as flash if it targets a commander and give that creature indestructible for 3 mana. I like it, protects Ellivere, because Ellivere is really important. Talked about Punching Courage, just like Armadillo Cloak, +2/+2 trample, lifelink, Utopia Sprawl, and Wild Growth, both for some ramp. Getting up into our spells, and we really don't have many because we want to rely on getting as many enchantments as possible. But as much as we have Darksteel Mutation, we have Kenriths, we have things like Lignify, and we have things like that for removal, but I wanted to still play some removal. So you see, we do still have Stroke of Midnight and Sword of Plowshares. I realized when I first put Stroke of Midnight in here that I thought this was the same thing as Generous Gift. Generous Gift actually can hit lands, where Stroke of Midnight can't hit lands. So if you're not worried about lands in your play group, get Stroke of Midnight. It's cheap. It's going to be cheap once Wilds of Eldraine gets opened some more, but you are giving your opponent a smaller creature if that's something you care about. Eladamri's Call is pretty expensive. You can take this out if you want to. You can easily replace this with a with another creature that draws cards when you cast or when enchantments come in. I just like Eladamri's Call. It's a good tutor here, and it puts it right into your hand. You could just as easily play the Enlightened Tutor if you want to, which is more expensive, but I like Eladamri's Call just because it gets a creature card, and we have a lot of creature cards we actually really care about. Flawless and Heroic Intervention for the protection. And we're using a lot of money between these 3 cards because these are 2 of the best protection spells we get access to for our creatures. Flawless Maneuver gives indestructible to all of our creatures. Heroic Intervention gives hexproof and indestructible to all of our permanents. We could play the Teferi's Protection if we wanted to. We could play the Clever Concealment. If you're worried about the protection, bring those guys in. I think they will help. But again, I'm trying to make kind of a well-rounded list here. We still have some. We're playing the Open the Armory because it can get all those those auras we really want, put them into our hand. Wreath Tether lets us return every aura from our graveyard to the battlefield. It says only creatures can be enchanted this way, so we can't bring back something that attaches to a planeswalker or a land. And then Winds of Wrath to destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted, and this could potentially help us one-side board wipe and end the game if we have a lot of creatures that are enchanted and our opponents don't have any. But let's get into the creatures, and I think this is where I did the most adding to what the deck already had, just because there's a couple creatures that felt obviously they didn't get reprinted in the deck, but the deck felt bare without them. And then there's a couple creatures that I think are absolute slam dunks from the main set. So I really like this creature base. There's probably only 1 or 2 that I would pull out maybe for more auras. But again, I think this gives us a good creature suite to work with as we go forward. Archon of Sun's Grace, I think is in the precon. I could be wrong, but it says Pegasus. Creatures you control have lifelink, and ever an enchantment enters the battlefield under control, we get a Pegasus. This is cool because anytime one of those rolls comes in, we're gonna get another Pegasus. So those Pegasi can block. They can attack. They could be a target for one of those virtuous roll tokens. Again, I like the idea of getting these extra tokens down to either block if need be or be attackers if we need them to be. Archon of the Wild Rose is the new one from the set. Each creature that we control that's enchanted by an aura we control have base toughness 4/4 and have flying. This is going to help us potentially get over our opponents, as well as potentially help get our commander over our opponents. And our opponents, Aura Gnarled got a reprint in the deck, and it certainly seems good. Creatures with power less than it can't block it, and it gets +1/+1 for each aura on the battlefield. This could just potentially become unblockable for most people the bigger it gets, and hopefully we can take good advantage of this, getting it in. One of the bigger creature cards that I brought in price-wise was Calyx from Martial Machine, The Aftermath. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield, we put a +1/+1 counter on target creature so we can hopefully grow our board. And then it says, whenever it or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. Do this only once per turn. So we get to copy one non-legendary enchantment we have, and if it's an aura, we would get to attach it. I like this card a lot. This can target a lot of things. I think my favorite target for it would be something like Sanctum Weaver. We'll talk about that when we get there. But there's a lot of other things we can use this to target. We don't want to target rolls, because remember, only one roll could be attached to a creature at a time. But we could target a roll and attach it to somebody else. We could get that virtuous roll token on another creature. But again, there's a lot of things we wouldn't mind copying and getting on something else. And Calyx is going to get big because it is an enchantment itself, and it's just going to start growing our creatures. So I like Calyx a lot. It has a high price tag, but it's such a good card, and it fits as a great role here. We're playing two different Danithas because Danitha cares so much about both equipment and auras. Danitha Capuchin Paragon, this one is originally from Dominaria. It says first strike, vigilance, lifelink, or an equipment spell as you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is great because not only the ones we cast on our creatures, but of course the ones we target our opponents with get cost 1 less to cast. And then Danitha, new Benalia's Light from March of the Machine, the Aftermath, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. So again, that's a stat line that's helpful because that we get those abilities, right? The bigger and bigger it gets, these both are going to get tougher, especially this one having Trample. And it says during each of your turns, you can cast an aura or equipment from your graveyard. Well, this is great because we can then potentially get some of those auras back that our opponents have gotten rid of. Destiny Spinner, creatures and enchantments we control. Spells we control can't be countered. And then for 4 mana, we can turn a land into an XX, where X is the number of enchantments you control. That can hurt pretty bad for our opponents. And then if that land attacks with Ellivere, we could potentially put a virtuous roll token on it, give it +1/+1 from each enchantment we control. We could, put that monster token on with Giant Inheritance. Again, that land could get pretty big, and it could definitely hurt our opponents. Eidolon of Blossoms drawing us every time an enchantment comes in. This is one of those Enchantress effects we really want, because if our rolls are going to let us draw, our auras are going to let us draw. I like this card a lot, and it feels even better here because we're going to get it every time one of our rolls comes in. Eidolon of Countless Battles was a card that I had really looked at for Enixthea, which we looked at last time for Commander Masters. And when I saw Ellivere, I was like, man, I really hope that Eidolon of Countless Battles is a card we think about, because it's one of those cards that I feel like fits even if you do put nothing on it. Its ability says, first ability is Bestow, so for 4 mana we can make this an aura attached to a creature, or for 3 mana it's just a creature. And either the creature it's enchanting or it gets +1/+1 for each creature we control, and +1/+1 for each aura we control. Eidolon of Blossoms is going to get pretty big, and even if we just put it down by itself, I feel like it's going to be a great creature to either put our auras onto, or just have a big creature laying around that our opponents still have to worry about. Gawain, Casting Director, is our secondary commander of the deck from the precon, and I really do like it. Whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield, choose one royal token, sorcerer token, monster token. We already saw the monster token giving +1/+1 and trample. One of those is, I believe, +1/+1 and ward 1, and the other one is something else. But at either rate, here's the ability to get more rolls onto our creatures, more auras on the battlefield, more +1/+1 to our effects. Again, Gawain is just going to help us do things with our creatures. I could see a world where you put him in the command zone as opposed to Ellivere to make sure you get more rolls down when our non-token creatures are coming in. But again, I think we're going to get plenty enough with Ellivere in the way we built the deck. But if you wanted to, you could make that switch. Catilda, Dawnheart Mentor. Here's another star where star's the number of spirits or enchantments we control. So again, this works really well with that Hollowed Haunting style of ability. And then if she dies and goes to the graveyard, you can disturb her back as Catilda's Rising Dawn and attach it or to a creature. And that creature gets flying, lifelink, protection from vampires, and +X, where X is the number of permanents that are either spirits or enchantments. So again, a great star creature that we can buff up, and it has lifelink, or we if it dies, we can use it to come back and get good value. Knick-Knack Oof seems kind of like an interesting card. When it comes in with X +1/+1 counters, and when it comes in, we reveal the top X of our library. Any number of aura cards with mana value X or less from them can go onto the battlefield, and then put all cards that were revealed this way that aren't on the battlefield back on the bottom. I like the idea of it. If you have a ton of mana and you have a good amount of auras, which we probably do, we can get a ton of value from it. If you want to go more traditional Enchantress route and put some more value enchantments in, I think the Oof could come out if you want to spin a bit towards more traditional enchantments. But I like the Oof for now. We'll see how it plays, and maybe it's something would be taken out. Core Spirit Dancer, +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. Whenever you cast an aura, you draw a card. This is great. Here's another, or you may draw a card. Another ability to draw us cards. Well, one of the most popular Store Brawl commanders of the time, and a card that felt wrong not to include, was Lightpaw's Emperor's Voice. This is such a fun creature. It says, whenever an aura enters the battlefield under your control, if you cast it, you may search your library for an aura card with mana value less than or equal to it, with a different name than each aura you control, and put that card on the battlefield attached to Lightpaw's. So, let's say we cast a 3-mana aura. If we did cast it, we can find an aura with 2 or 1 mana cost mana value and put it attached to Lightpaw's. This is great for Lightpaw's because no matter what we get, we can hopefully go get these cheapy things like Ethereal Armor or Hyena Umbra or Rancor, these cheapy auras, and get them onto Lightpaw's and kind of make her bigger if we want to. Regal Bunnycorn was a card I immediately looked at and went, I want to jam this card in every single Enchantress deck that I make for the set, and that's because this card is going to get bonkers. It says its power toughness equal to the number of non-land permanents we control. It's already going to be big. This is a perfect target for those monster roll tokens, but we could literally basically almost double it with either the Virtuous Roll or All That Glitters or Ethereal Armor and just make Regal Bunnycorn giant and difficult to deal with. It is 2 mana and it's going to come in and be really big. I love it. Sanctum Weaver, one of the better enchantment creatures in the deck that we get access to. Tapping for X mana of any one color where X is the number of enchantments we control. Love this card. There are shenanigans you can do with it. We're not playing the shenanigans, but I like this card a lot. For the mana, Seteshian Champion, one of our best Enchantress effects. Whenever an enchantment comes in at all, +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. So all those rolls that come in, Seteshian Champion's growing, and we're drawing cards for it. Seteshian Champion, again, another great target for those trample effects, because it's probably just going to get big. Starnheim Courser, making all of our artifact or enchantment spells we cast cost 1 less to cast and just has flying. I love cards like this and Transcendent Envoy, which does the same thing, but just for auras, because they're already making our spells cheaper, and they're great targets to buff up because they're already in the air, which means they're already going to be hopefully evasive. Sithis, one of my favorite enchantment commanders of all time, fits in well, gaining us life and drawing us a card every time we cast an enchantment, and again, not a bad target for a lot of the things if we need to. Timber Paladin is the only technical artifact in the deck, I believe, just because it's an artifact creature, but it has a fun effect. If it's only enchanted by 1 aura, it's a 3/3. If it's enchanted by 2 auras, it's a 5/5 with Vigilance, and if it's enchanted by 3 or more auras, it is a 10/10 with Vigilance and Trample. It seems like such a fun card, and I can't wait to see if we can get this thing stocked to the brim with auras to make it massive. And then Umbra Mystic, probably one of my favorite cards that got reprinted in the precon. Giving every aura we control that's attached to a permanent totem armor, which means the enchanted permanent you control would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy an aura attached to it. This is great for the rolls because then we sacrifice the roll and it goes away and we can try to attach another roll to it later, but we can protect our creatures hopefully from just being destroyed by having auras attached to them, keep them around, and then live for them to fight another day. But what do you guys think of Ellivere? Let me know down in the comments. What are you doing with your Virgin Valor deck? Did you have the same ideas as me? Do you have different ideas? I would love to use this as a chatting point about what your favorite auras are that I'm not playing. I'd love to hear them down in the comments. There's so many of them. It took me a while to kind of knock this down to ones I wanted to play, but the last video for this week will be Etriet, yeah, the black-white auras commander. So we're gonna cover that, another color combination in black-white for the end of the week, and just kind of see this with a different color combination. Although I love my Selesnya enchantments, and this is my favorite 2-color combination for enchantments, I think Etriet will be really fun. I'm going to mention this in this video and in that video. Personally, I am in the process of working on taking Onyxia, the Commander Masters commander, and making her into an auras deck using Ellivere and Etriet, and kind of combining these all into one. If you have any interest with that, let me know down in the comments, and maybe we'll cover that one once we get through more of our Wilds of Eldraine content. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.